Welcome to Coffee and Keys, where we blend our expertise and personal experiences to unlock your awareness of the real estate industry.
They're the best.
Here they are.
And now, here's your hosts, Darlene Kemp and Jacques.
So good morning.
Good morning. It's been a while since we talked, 30 minutes?
On to our second podcast. This is so fun.
On to our second podcast. So I always get a kick out of the intro that we have. It almost seems like we have a fan club. And then
There's
the
nothing
followers.
that gives us that motivation to enjoy what we're doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more followers we have, the better we'll do. And
the better we'll do. And hopefully we'll get better at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. How can we not? Right. Practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
It makes perfect. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, geez, it's been quite a 2 weeks for us. We do have a fan club.
Yay.
I kind of just wanted to take the time to say thank you to our producer.
Grant, he's awesome.
Oh my gosh, he is awesome, because when we went to him, we knew what we wanted to do. We just didn't know how to get there.
No idea how to get from point A to point B. And so, he was a great find to help us.
What a dream come
thanks,
true.
Grant.
Yep. Thank you, Grant. So
now we're on to our second one.
We're on to our second one. Yep. And the things he puts up with from us. Anyway, yes. Thank you, Grant, for being you and believing in us and putting it all together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's see, last, our very first one, we really just kind of got started with Coffee and Keys by saying, hey, it's all a process and buying a home. And we just want to help everybody enjoy that process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So you want to do a quick recap and explain the Loanopoly board.
Yeah, the Loanopoly. And again, what we'll try and do is see if we can't get Grant to figure out how to put the post on here so that they can actually have a copy of the Loanopoly that will show up. But it really just kind of walks you through those steps, because like anything, like building a house, you have to build the foundation before you can build a roof, right? And then, you can't fill in the middle until you have the first part done. So buying a house is kind of the same way. Real estate works kind of the same way. There's certain steps that have to be taken one step to another. So we always start, most of the time, when somebody wants to find a house, they want to start with you, right? Right. They want to go see houses.
Yes, so that's usually how it starts. Is I get this call and they have a list of homes.
Yeah, let's go see houses, and you wait, slow down, back up to stage one.
Yeah, I've said slow your roll a few times. So at that point, we start talking about pre-qualification. And amazingly enough, a lot of buyers don't know what that means. And they think it takes a long time to get it done.
Yeah, and it's really a first step that really is a lot simpler than most people think. A lot of times they're intimidated about the finance part of it, where you have to show everything. But it really is a quick phone call. I mean, somebody can give me a call and I'm basically taking the loan application over the phone, or if they feel more comfortable, they can put it in online. But really, we have to just get that baseline information so that we can figure out how much of a house they can go look at, right? I mean, you don't want to go out there and show them $1 million homes and they only qualify for 200,000, right? Because that's a huge, comfort zone difference there, right?
Yeah. Well, that sets us up for failure, when we do that. So we make sure that, I try to stay within their pre-qualification level. So I usually go from to their comfort level, because 9 times out of 10, their comfort level is a lot lower than what they qualify for.
Most of the times, and that's what we kind of find out. So the pre-qualification stage is really simple. I basically take their information over the phone. What is their income? How much they get paid? What are their debts? Pull the credit. Make sure, there's a lot of different loan programs. So we want to make sure that they're going to fit into a specific loan program. And then I'm going to ask them questions like, What's your comfort zone? How much do you want to spend a month? How much do you want to spend a month in housing payments? Or how much money do you have for down payment and closing costs? And a lot of people think, I need 20% down to buy a house. And not the case. And
not always.
Yeah. Most of the time, especially in our area, we're dealing with VA loans with no money down, FHA loans with 3.5% down. We've got some conventional with as low as 3% down. And we have some great first-time homebuyer programs where they really don't need any down payment. But there are costs involved, right? And that's what we'll do when we take them through this process, is let them know, along the way, what funds do they need to buy a house just to start with. But the pre-qualification is free. So it doesn't cost them anything. So whether they want to buy today, tomorrow, 6 months from now, a year from now, it's never too soon to start the first step.
It's never too soon. And that was going to be a question I was going to ask you is, if they're not ready right now, some people are in a lease, they're renting and their lease ends in 6 months. And then they come to me, to prepare to purchase. I think we have one like that actually right now. Yeah. The question I was going to ask is it too soon when you're not, to get pre-qualified when you're not ready to purchase right now?
No, it's never really too soon because, like I said, it doesn't cost you anything. I may go ahead and pull the credit. Of course, that credit report's good for 120 days in most cases. And if we need to refresh another one, we do. A single pull in your credit is not as drastic as some people think it will be. I'm going to pull my credit. Oh my gosh, you're going to hurt my credit score. Where it really hurts your credit score is when you have a mortgage company pull, a car company pull, a credit report, all those different industries pull, then re-inquiries will lower that score temporarily. But it's really the only way to set that baseline, right? So when we can take a look at the credit, we can start talking to you about budgeting. We can start talking to you about comfort zone. We can start talking to you about how much money you'll need to save for things like closing costs. Even if you get into a first-time homebuyer program that doesn't require any money down, the loan still likes you to have at least 1% of that sales price in the bank. So it allows you to save that money. So find out now what those things that you need to do and to find out if you're ready now, right? So if you're not ready, then we'll give you the steps to get ready. But so it's never too soon to start the first step in getting pre-qualified. Like I said, it doesn't cost anything. It's just a conversation. It usually doesn't even take that long. I can take the information over the phone and then get back and pull up the credit and pull up the numbers, and then give them a call back within an hour and have an answer for them. So
that's pretty quick.
Yeah, so it's really not that hard. And if you want to go look at houses, it doesn't really take that long. Now, if it's somebody who's self-employed or something like that, I may need to get tax returns to really figure out income. So there's some cases where, I need some documentation right up front. And I always say, you want to make sure I have the documentation before you actually write a contract, because we want to make sure that there's nothing that's, that we want to make sure that everything is documented and everything looks good. And there's nothing that's going to, come up and prevent you from moving forward. But the first step is really just that phone call and gathering the information, whether you want to do it over the phone, or I can give you a link to a website where you can go in and fill out your information if you want to. But I still want to be able to get on the phone with you after that to go over all of your options. And then they have a clear picture. Then they feel confident, and then they can really enjoy the next step, which is finding a home, because they'll know they can afford the monthly payment. They'll know that they have enough money. Or in cases where, hey, look, this is what they have. They can get into a house, but they'll need a seller to pay this or a seller to pay that. Or they'll need a little assistance along the way, or we can find out, hey, do you have mom or dad that might give you a gift? Or is it, so there's things that we can work out during that stage, but then we'll kind of, once that's done, hand them over to you. And that's step 2. And I think that's what we're really here to talk about today, is
talk about step 2.
But 2.
If they don't hear what they want to hear during that pre-qual, I guess phase. Yeah. Sometimes it's not too far off to get to where they want to be, right? I mean, I had a client, we had a client actually. We had a client that, and I'll tell this story quick because we can run out of time with all of my realtor
all your stories. Yeah, absolutely. But
we had a client that was a tenant in a house, and the owner of the home put the house on the market. So he knew somebody that had referred him to an agent and a lender. So he goes to the lender first, and the lender said, there's no way you qualify. And so, I would never recommend this, but his strategy was to make it very hard for the seller to sell that house, hoping.
Living in the property, he's the tenant.
That's right. I mean, he was sitting around in his underwear, leaving the house a mess.
So it looked really bad when people were looking at it. So it
looked really bad. And that poor seller couldn't sell that house. The seller, grew tired and disappointed that he couldn't sell the house. He took the house off the market. So let's fast forward to 4 months later. The seller comes back with a different agent and he puts the house on the market. So the buyer actually was referred to me at that point. And so then he was honest. He said, I tried to get pre-qualified 4 months ago. I couldn't get pre-qualified. So I said, well, okay, that's where we start. Let's go back to that table. And if you can't get pre-qualified, we just have to deal with the truth and what we deal with, So I turned it over to you. And I told you, I don't know if he can get pre-qualified, but go ahead and try. And lo and behold, you came back. You could have blown me over with a feather. I mean, you came back and
said, got him done.
I think I can do it. And I was like, there's no way. 4 months later.
Some people are a lot harder and don't look at everything that they have to look at or forget to ask certain questions. And really, until you have all the pieces to the puzzle, it's kind of hard to put it together. So, yeah.
That's right. Because he's living in that house today.
Yeah.
So.
And happy as can be because he did not.
Yes. He loves his house. He has done so much to it. He calls me every now and then and says, oh, you're not going to believe what I did.
Yeah.
So that's a happy story. And that story is told that because you get no the first time doesn't mean that it remains no.
And I always try to say it's not really a no, it's a not now.
It's a not now.
Yeah, it's a not now. And then we come up with a game plan to figure out what are those steps that you need to take in order to get qualified. So I always try to say it's never a no, it's a not now. Once you do this or once you do that, And there's a lot of times where people thought, well, I can't now. And then I'm going, well, why not? You have got everything here. Let's figure out how to put this together. And then some people are like, well, I just, in today's market, I don't have down payment and closing costs. And I'm like, well, first time home buyer, this property's in a target zone. You won't need down payment. This property's here, So a lot of times we can work around those issues. And then instead of using the money for the down payment, they use it for closing costs and you can go find them something, right?
Yeah, we've got one of those too.
Yeah, we do. The fun stories.
The fun stories.
Yeah.
But all very successful. Happy endings.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do it for, right? I mean, there's nothing better to just, have somebody be so excited that they didn't think that they could do it and we figured out a way and we made it happen. So
I've witnessed a lot of tears. I witnessed a lot of tears at the closing table.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of hugs.
Yeah, a lot of hugs. But they're like, I can't believe that I'm a homeowner. I can't believe that we got it done. And especially in the competitive market, because a couple years ago, it was like crazy,
Yeah, going through all sorts of different housing markets and things like that, which is why it's never too soon to start this. You get the pre-qualification done, but then you need to educate them on the market and what's going on in the market, because they're never going to get a contract unless they understand what's going on in the market today. So you want to tell us a little bit about that as far as today's market goes? I know it's definitely changed a lot.
In Virginia, it's competitive still. I mean, multiple offers. I wrote an offer a few weeks ago, and there were 40 offers on this house. 40. I mean, we didn't win, and I'm a bit of a sore loser.
Yeah. You don't lose very often.
I don't. And I think that's why I'm a sore loser.
But it means that's because you know the market, and and obviously that one may have been listed a little low, so it had to, emotions can get the price to go higher. But it's just understanding the market, understanding where the sellers are, what they can and they can't do, and how bad they want to move. So, but first you got to find a house that the buyer likes, right?
You got to find a house that the buyer likes.
So the minute I finish up the pre-qualification stage and say, okay, here's what they can do, Crystal. It's your turn. Now go find them a house. What's your next step?
This is the fun part. So my approach to finding a home is not just to find a home, it's to find the right home.
Right home. Mm-hmm.
You know, so we kind of continue the interview process, and the process actually started before the pre-qual, the interview before getting pre-qualified. So it started then. And, you know, and I hand them over to you, you hand them back, and we go back through that interview process. And by then, you know, when I get the letter from you, you have already talked to them. Then you send me the letter and I call them. And of course I congratulate them. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to go out and buy a house.
We can move to step 2. Yay.
You get a house and you get a house and you get a house.
And so now they get a little nervous and scary, but they're excited.
They do. They do. So we continue the process, the interview process, however is comfortable for them. At this point, it's all about the comfort level because it is a little nerve-wracking, to say the least. So it's either by Zoom. I do whatever the buyer wants to do. If you want to meet in person at the office, I do that. If you just want to Zoom, I had one buyer, last week that we Zoomed and she was cooking dinner while we were talking.
While you were Zooming.
Yeah, while we were Zooming.
That's called multitasking. That's the world today.
She's got to feed the kids, you know?
Get the housework done. Yeah, absolutely.
So we could go to the office. We can Zoom. We can FaceTime. I'll go to your house. I would prefer to do it in person, but we can't always do that. During COVID, I sold a lot of homes by Facebook and Zoom, and I met my client for the first time at the closing table.
Nice.
You know, so being, you know, in Virginia, it's a military town. People, you know, they start the process with a set of orders.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to Zoom. Yeah. So when we do the interview process, some of the things that I discuss, the buyer's needs versus their wants, because, you know, we all want that mansion for a little bit of money.
Right. The wants versus in other words, setting those realistic expectations, because I just told you what the maximum I can get them qualified for.
That's right.
And they told me what their comfort zone is. So now the realistic part of defining needs and wants is making sure that you can find them something that fits their needs.
That's
and hopefully get a couple wants, right?
And get a couple wants, because rarely have I found a house that has everything.
Yeah.
Maybe once or twice in my career.
Yeah.
You know.
So you get their wish list from them, and then you go through that wish list that says, this is a must. I have to have it.
That's right. So what can you live without? I could do
away without this, or
That's
and,
right.
You know, asking them to, you know, you don't have to think of this house as the forever home, right? This could be your stepping stone. So that's what I always say too. You know,
it's your investment.
Where they are in their life. Yeah, it's investment. Yeah,
it's your investment. Mm-hmm. So we kind of swing into the cost of ownership. That's a good one. I think that's pretty important. You know, because you're buying a house. Yes, you're going to have to upkeep it. You know, yes, you're going to have to pay for water. Yes, you're going to have to pay electricity. Yeah. You know, so we go down the line.
But
you got to pay for maintenance.
Doesn't go up.
But your rent doesn't go up. You know, and you can do whatever you want to it.
Yeah, you can make it your own.
That's right.
Put your personality into it. Yeah. Love that part of it. So in other words, when you find them their first home, it usually, you know, it's tough to find a house that's exactly personalized to one person.
It is tough. So even in new construction, you don't get everything.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. You have to choose what those upgrades you want are.
That's right.
Which ones are important to you. Yeah.
Yeah. We've purchased a house in new construction, and you know what? After we closed, I went shopping again. I mean,
you tore the carpet out within 30 days.
That's right, because I didn't want that carpet. And you're right, I did. I tore the carpet out. I put floors in, redid the closets. I mean, you know, so there.
But that's because you wanted to personalize it and make it.
That's
your own.
right.
So that
says that there is no perfect home out there.
Right.
You know.
So as you're walking, trying to find houses for buyers, those are some of the things that you start with in that first meeting with them. Then, right? You kind of say, hey, you know, these are the things that, you know, are a must, and these are the things that, you know, not only in the house but in the area, right?
Right. Yeah, in the area. Well, they get to pick the area. I'll show them any house they want to see, as long as it's within their, you know, their pre-qualification amount.
Yeah, because there's all sorts of things that they can look at, you know, for the house and getting it what they want and being, you know, wants versus needs and narrowing that down. But then there's schools and neighborhoods and all that other kind of stuff that they want to be in a certain school district, or if they want to be, you know, close to base or close to work.
Right.
Or, you know, so those are all things because, you know, let's face it, the house determines the value, but the location more than anything.
It sure does.
Determines.
It sure does.
Somebody's willing to pay for a house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's that old saying? What is a house really worth? What somebody's willing to pay for it, right?
What somebody's willing to pay for it. You're right. Exactly.
Doesn't matter what the price is for. This market proves that.
In.
Yeah.
That's where competition comes in.
You might actually have to pay more than appraised value or any of that comes along. So,
gosh, we've had our share of that in the last couple of years.
So it really proves that old saying: "His house is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it." Right?
That's right.
You know, if they don't want to pay what somebody appraises it or says that it's for, they're not going to get it sold. But if it's a house that everybody wants, if an appraiser says, well, the others just sold around the house for, you know, one price, you know, you might be willing to pay more, but you're willing to pay above the appraised value. That means it's worth it to you, right?
You want it that much more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
let's see another, and I'm reading notes, folks, because I don't want to forget anything.
She wanted to, you know, all the special points about finding a home, right? All the things that matter and take into consideration when finding a home.
Another thing I like to do is educate my buyer on common real estate terms.
Ah, that's a good one. I always say this is a totally different language, and we've spoke it for so many years. We just, you know, sometimes forget that the normal person doesn't know what this language is, right?
Oh gosh, sometimes I don't know what the language is.
Use a lot of acronyms: LTV, PMI, PICRA, Benzer. Yeah.
All kinds
EMD.
EMD.
What is that? But yeah, for somebody who's not in real estate or talk real estate all day long, that it can be really confusing when you're talking about real estate terms like that. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I really love when they throw it back to me. You know, you've been together for, 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and they say, so when we get to the PICRA stage, and I'm like,
oh, you got it.
You know what it is.
And how much do I need to write that EMD for?
Yeah. When do you need the EMD?
Yeah.
And who holds it? I love that. I know they're catching on,
when they use the terms. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Another thing that we discuss is common courtesy when walking into a seller's home. We cannot go at 6 a.m. to see that house.
Not if somebody's got
on a Saturday morning. That's common courtesy. Like? Although I had one that did.
Again, there's always exception to every rules, but usually it's, it's all about the rules that, and especially if you're, wanting to look at a house that you want to own and become your own, you do have to take somebody else's feelings into consideration, right?
Yes.
You're going to be bidding on their house. And if you come across to them like, they may not be very negotiable, and it's all about being negotiable, right?
Yeah, the big thing now is the recordings. Sellers will record and listen.
Yeah, everybody has the Ring doorbell, and everybody has the videos in the house. And so you're right. So if you're saying things in the house that the homeowner can hear or see, or they could take it personally. The old saying is you never tell anybody their baby's ugly, right? So this is their house, and if you're going in there and criticizing everything, you kind of upset.
And then you want to write an offer on it. Yeah. And then they've heard everything.
Luck. They don't like you anymore.
Why didn't we win? We had the best offer.
It's their house, so they've taken it personally, right? Sometimes it's not all about the money. Sometimes they just want to have the right person to have the house that they've loved for so long and they raised their kids with. I remember when my daughter bought her house, that was one of the biggest things that the seller was saying. She was so excited and she wanted my daughter to have it because they just had their first child and she raised her kids in that house and it was just perfect for them. And so they just wanted to know that they would enjoy it. They were actually moving and having a house built, but they raised their kids in that house. And she wanted whoever bought the house to be able to raise their kids in it. So I thought that that was amazing, that was really a consideration in negotiating that contract.
Right. Yeah.
All the things that you don't think about. Everybody thinks about it's all about the dollar.
The money.
It makes a difference. You know, most of the time it is the bottom line to the seller, right? But when it's their own personal house, sometimes emotions and feelings get built right into that.
Exactly. Yeah, because we've won some good ones, and it wasn't, you get the agent calls and say, well, you're not the best offer money-wise, but
we feel more confident this is going to go through, or we feel like you're not as much of a risk. You don't have any contingencies. There's more likely it's going to close on time. If you got somebody that's moving out of a house and they're moving into a new house and their new house is contingent upon this one closing, or worse yet, they don't want to have to pay 2 house payments, right?
Right.
So, sometimes taking a secure offer where everybody feels good is going to win over taking one that might be $1,000 more, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, let's see. I guess we discussed the loan process. Mm-hmm. By then I'm the one that's reinforcing what you've told them to start with.
Yeah.
And
you at this point, you're seeing them a lot more often than they're hearing from me, because they're really just looking at houses, right? So you're showing them houses. How about evaluating the property conditions and things like that too? I mean, that's something that they like, but not sure.
Well, it's funny because when we walk into a house, they see the open kitchen, the granite countertops, and I'm looking around like, what's that spot in the ceiling? So I'm looking for something totally different. Yeah, I'm walking downhill in this living room,
There might be an issue over here.
So I look for things that are totally different than the buyers. Some you have experienced buyers, and then I've had repeat customers or clients. Then they start to do what I do. They start looking at everything, and then I'm saying, "Did you see those granite countertops?" Like, no.
Right. I always say, make sure the bones are good.
Yeah, exactly. So there's probably a really good question that we forget sometimes to ask is there anybody else in your life that's going to help you make this decision?
You're right. Yeah. Because I remember when my daughter did her house, Mama had to look at it.
That's
I was helping
right.
with a little bit of that payment day. Although great experience. I love that more than anything. It was my favorite client to work with, right? But if you got somebody that you're dealing with and their parents are the one who's going to make the final decision, you want to know that up front so that you can get them involved sooner rather than later, right?
Now, I don't divulge anything to them if they're not on the offer or the contract. However, I know that, they're there. And sometimes I love the parents. I think I've always gotten along with all the parents that have come along, during the showings or, in the decision-making process. So I know that they're there. But sometimes you have to combat what they've seen on the internet.
Or when they bought a house 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
30 years ago, the market was totally different. That's when I first started in the market. It was a buyer's market then. The buyers could ask for all closing costs. They wanted this fixed, that fixed. They wanted everything. But the normal market time was 6 months. And you really had to be negotiable just for some buyer to pick your house over somebody else's. So totally different market. So if you're showing a parent that bought 30 years ago, they're going to have a different experience than the buyer that's going to worth be buying in this market today. Absolutely.
I usually, when I meet them for the first time, I'm all ears because I can probably guess what I'm going to combat, if I'm going to combat anything.
Yeah.
However, I would say that probably 99% of the parents that I've dealt with when I'm representing their child, I've gotten along with, you know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
and most
that's
of the time, you know that they're just there to help.
that,
And that you hope
so
that
they
they're
think.
just advising them in the right way, right? Yeah, you know. So again, you know, you stay up on today's market, and that's what's really important in the agent that a buyer chooses to work with, right? I mean, it's really important to know that the agent they're working with knows the market today, knows how to get contracts ratified or contracts through, and knows how to communicate with all other parties to the transaction, because that's what's going to help the transaction run smoothly. It's just working with somebody that is a professional and is going to handle everybody professionally, but knows the right questions to ask. And you're not there to tell them what to do but you're
definitely
there to
not
guide them to get the house that they dream about, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had an unhappy buyer, come to think of it. And I've sold a lot of homes. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have.
Yeah. And that's all about asking the right questions, right? It's just about asking. It's finding out what is important. And I do that on the loan. What's most important to you as a buyer? Is it the monthly payment? Is it the cash out of pocket? When it comes to the financial part of it, what's most important to you? And I'm sure you do the same thing as far as the house. What's most important to you in your house that you're buying?
That's right.
And it's just really just educating them and having them understand the market and the dynamics of the market and helping educate them. So because the choice is theirs, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I love about you. You always educate the buyers to make the best choice for them. You never tell them what to do. You say, this is your options and here's your pros and your cons. You just help them through that. And the decision in the end is all theirs.
I've given some looks though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, I can't think of one buyer that I've had that is unhappy or said they were unhappy in their home.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
It's exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
So then we talk about the buyer schedule and our approach to seeing homes. At that
Especially,
point.
that's the other thing in today's market. It's not like you're going to, put them in like 30 years ago. You put them in your car and you show them around all weekend, and you hopefully you find a house by the end of the day.
Not anymore.
Tell us a little bit about.
Oh my gosh! So
in today's world.
First of all, every client has a different schedule. I've had nurses. I've worked for a politician. So as a realtor, your phone has to be on all the time. My phone never goes off. I'm sorry, my phones, because I have more than one.
2 of those.
Yeah, I do. 2 phones and 3 lines.
I've been pushing that Find My Phone button all the
time. Well, you know me well. They're never in the same place at the same time.
Where's my phone? I think that's the main reason I got my Apple Watch, right? So I can find my phone. No, most of the time it's right here. Right?
My phones are always on.
Yeah.
Even when I go on vacation, my phones are on. I've written many offers on an airplane. I've written many offers on vacation. So you just have to be available always, or at least I feel like I have to. I would never tell a client that, call me, before 5, because I'm all for it.
They may not freak out till 7. Then what are they going to do? Wait for the next day?
So
they freaked out at the dinner table. No, it's an emotional transaction, and it's just nice to know that somebody's there to just communicate, and that's the biggest key, is that communication. Yeah, so it's just building that trust to know that if they reach out and call you, even if they get a voicemail because you're on the other line because you want to give somebody else 100% of your attention, to know that you're going to be calling them back or getting right back with them. So that's the key to this whole thing is it's emotional. So they just, if they're having, questions or whatever, and I always say, if they're not a little nervous, I'd be a little nervous as a lender.
Yes.
But yeah, it's normal and typical to be a little nervous at this stage because you're making a huge commitment and you're making a huge, financial investment. And that's how we're going to look at it. This is an investment. It's an investment in your future. You want to love the house. You're buying it to live in and to appreciate and to enjoy on a daily basis. But at the end, it's probably one of the biggest financial investments that you make because now you're not just paying for space and time when you're renting.
That is true.
Buying something that is yours, and as houses appreciate in value, that they'll reap the benefit of that appreciation, right?
Definitely. So it's funny because I work with multiple buyers at one time, multiple sellers at one time, and I think the trick to juggling that is time blocking. Yeah. So, it's rare, honestly, with as many clients as I work with at one time for everybody to have the same schedule.
True.
So I might have a client, like I have a nurse. We have a nurse that we're working with. I know she gets off at 2:00. If she wants to see a house, it's between 4 and 6. So I time block that on my calendar for her. Not saying we're going to go out and see a house,
but you want to make sure
every
you're
day.
Available, knowing
but
that
I'm
that's
always
the time
available
frame
for
she's
her.
Working with. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I've had people that work nights get off at 7 in the morning. I time block 10 to 12. So it puts me on the road all day, probably many times. I've left my house, at 9:00, and I've gotten home at 9:00 at night, and I'm running in the house like my hair's on fire trying to write 3 offers.
And that's when you're calling me. Hey, run these numbers for me. I'm going, yeah. Which is another one because the minute you find them a house, right? Now we're almost getting ready into that next step. But once you find them the house that they love and they want to write in that offer, especially in today's world, timing is everything.
Everything.
Because, the listing agent, could close accepting bids at any time, right?
Right.
So once they find the house that they like, you're already making phone calls on that one, but you're also saying, we want to make sure that the buyer is comfortable in the offer that they're making. Can you do this, right?
That's right.
Let's check, interest rates change daily. Let's check the rates. Let's check the numbers. Let's see, and you're calling the listing agent too, right? You said, I know you said that many times. You call them and reach out to them.
I call the listing agent. Once we go through the steps of, the discussion and the interview steps, the next thing is our commitment to each other. Yeah. I'm not going to really go into that too deep because we could do a podcast on that alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about right before you actually take them out and start looking at those homes that you got to take a little step backwards first and say, let's talk about our commitments to each other. Let's talk about each person's responsibility in this process, which is key. Yeah. Before you can really even start that next step of finding a home, they need to really understand the process.
Yeah, you have to. We could only hope that the interview process, because we've kind of ended that at this point, went well, and we do want to work together. Yeah. And even if you want to try, let's go out for one house and see if it works. I'll do that. Yeah. But in order for me to represent a buyer, we have to be committed. And hopefully we've learned a little bit about each other, if our relationship's going to work. But because and you said the perfect word with relationship, because it is a two-way street, right? It is a two-way street.
You want to work for them, and they want to work for you and are with you in that way. So if they like you and they want to hire you as their agent, then that's awesome. And the same thing, that you don't want to work with somebody that you're not quite clicking with so it's a two-way street. Yeah.
It is a two-way street.
You're evaluating the work relationship and, the commitments that each one of you are going to make, that obviously you are available for them pretty much in your time block and you're doing all this for them. So you want to know that they're also going to give you the same courtesy of being available once you find a place to have the conversations, to be able to, follow through on the loan application and the documentation so that we're ready once they find a house to write a really strong, so there's each side has a responsibility, and it's important for them to commit to that responsibility before they start running around town and looking for homes, right?
Yeah, and it's a commitment. We could only hope that we're a match. Mm-hmm. It's almost like finding each other on Tinder, and we both swipe the same way.
I've been married way too long to even know what Tinder is. Go ahead.
I only know Tinder because I'll ask my client, how did you meet? And they're like, Tinder. And I'm like, Tinder? Huh? What is Tinder? That's the only reason why I know. You're right. I've been married just as long as you have. We didn't have Tinder. We had libraries. Libraries, bars, and laundromats.
Yeah, I do remember those days. We were young and poor and went to the laundromat. And then the best thing when I was dating, it was a Suds and Pubs.
Suds and Pub.
Yeah, you could do your laundry and drink at the bar all at the same time. Clothes never got put away those nights.
Or you left with somebody else's clothes.
Or left yours in the dryer.
I left yours in the dryer. Oh my gosh. So
the world has changed.
If we have swiped, it has. If we've swiped in the same direction, it is time for us to commit to each other. Yeah. And so then there's some paperwork that needs to be filled out. And again, I'm not going to go deep into it, but in Virginia, it's called an exclusive right to represent buyer agreement. Mm-hmm. And in Arizona, it's called a buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement. Basically, it's a mutual agreement between the buyer and the broker. Now, there's your key right there, because you're sitting in front of a buyer and they think that they are committing to you as the agent. And that's not true. They are committing to the brokerage and the broker. Of which I am a standard agent for.
Right.
So
the agency relationship is
the agency relationship. Mm-hmm. So what it says basically is you as the buyer, you're going to commit to work exclusively with the broker. It also outlines my obligation to you as the buyer. And it talks about broker compensation, and broker compensation is the paycheck. Yeah. So it talks about that.
There's a lot of times so they don't even know,
They don't even know how we get paid.
How do you get paid? Yeah.
Yeah. So it talks about that. Yeah. And
who you
it
represent.
Outlines how I'm going to get paid.
Yeah.
And again.
And who you're protecting in a transaction, and who you're really looking out for, and who you're trying to get the best deal for, and negotiating for, and all those kind of things to come into that place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then you can do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But again, that could be a whole podcast in itself, just getting into that form and those terms and things like that. So we'll definitely have to plan that and come back around on
that's probably a 3-parter.
It could be.
It's a long one.
Might be where we might get a little attorney in here and might have ask some questions to an attorney or something.
You know what?
Invite that in.
I think that's a good idea. If there's any attorneys out there watching, please call us. Let's do a podcast on a buyer-broker agreement. Yeah. Definitely.
That'd be awesome.
So once we sign that, guess what? We're in a relationship. We're committed to each other. We can go out and look at homes.
And you can really go to find the homes for them. So obviously, tell us a little bit about the tools and where they go to find how. I mean, what I've observed, the minute somebody wants to buy a house, including my kids when they were going through it, is let's go online, let's look at all these houses online.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's they're all of a sudden they're keen, and all they see is houses for sale. They didn't see them there before, but now all of a sudden when they want to buy one, houses are everywhere almost. In today's world, maybe not so much, but yeah. So
it's funny. And you know what? I'm an agent that keep all search avenues open. not afraid to explore, not afraid to learn a new avenue. Listen, if my buyer can present one, I'm on it. You know,
because you're really representing them and looking out for them. So whether it's a house that's listed or we call it, here's another acronym, FISBO.
A FISBO. Oh, yeah.
Or,
yeah.
Or if there's a neighborhood, I love what you were saying too. We had that talk. There's a neighborhood that they want to be in.
So yes, I've had that situation. I think I was telling you this recently. So I had a buyer that wanted to see a specific house. We went to that house and she kept looking at the neighbor's house. And, I'm turning the key, trying to get in, and I'm in. She's standing on the porch, peering over to the neighbor's house. So she comes in the house and she says, you know what? If that house over there ever went up for sale, I would buy it. And I said, oh, yeah, challenge number one.
Yeah.
So after we saw the house, which she didn't like the one that we were there to see, I went home and I wrote a letter to the neighbor. And don't you know, that neighbor reached out to me from my letter and said, I am going to list this house in 2 weeks. I couldn't believe it. That's the first time I had ever done that. And so I called my buyer, said, you are not going to believe this. You're not. And I'm taking a picture of the letter that I received from the neighbor. And so when it went up for sale, we were the first ones in the door, and she didn't buy it.
She didn't like that once she got into it, right? Yeah,
once she got into it, she didn't like it. She didn't like the inside. But, I mean, that's the first time I've ever experienced that. So I'm not above writing a letter. I don't know if I'd go knock on the door, because you never know what you're going to see on the other side, but I will write a letter.
Yeah. But once they give you, what they're kind of looking for, if it's realistic, and if it's doable, yeah. I mean, if they want you to go find them a $200,000 house in a $500,000 neighborhood, that's a different conversation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But
definitely.
Yeah, so that's awesome,
So, I keep every avenue open. I set the common thing to do is set the buyer up in your realtor portal when a house that comes on the market that fits their criteria. It shoots out an email to the agent, me, and the buyer.
Right. So that they know about it as soon as it's listed.
As soon as it's listed. Now, I have several of those going on at one time. So I might get the same house 3 or 4 or 5 different times, and it comes to mind, who is this for? But if I think that, here's one that's a really good one, I'm usually the first one to reach out to the buyer and say, hey, did you see 123 Jones Street? Let's go see it.
Let's go look at it. Yeah. And then, there's times too, I know when, they go online and they see that Zillow or whatever. So the cool thing about your site, from what I understand, is, you know whether or not it's available or not. When they go on some of these other sites, it's like, what is it, needle in a haystack, right? They may be available, they may not. It might have been listed or sold 6 months ago, but it's still,
right.
Still on the site, still coming up. But
I don't shut that avenue either. If you're on Zillow, because buyers love Zillow, they love Redfin, they love Realtor.com.
They want to see houses inside and out.
They want to see houses. And they're not necessarily all in real time, like you said. Some of them closed 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. But if they're on there and they see, this is the house that I like, can we go see it? And they text me the address, because 2 things that's going to tell me. One is this, if I see a house like this, you're going to like it. That's the first thing. But most importantly, it may be available, you know?
Or if it didn't show up in their feed, it's because they told you a must was it had to have 2 full baths, and this one only has 1.5.
Has 1.5. You're right.
So if it's not showing up in the feed, but they gave you a must, and you put it in your search criteria that way, then maybe that's why. So maybe it's time to know that it's okay. Well, if you will accept a 1.5, now let's open a ride in the search. If nothing else is showing up, let's figure out some of those other things that
that's right.
Else to show up. So
and that's happened actually, because I'm like, it's available. Why didn't it come up on the feed? So I look and it's $20,000 higher than their comfort level.
In their comfort zone,
but they're
sending it to you anyway. And that's why I give them two numbers. Here's your comfort zone. Here's your qualification. And then you guys can find the middle, right?
That's right. So I'm not above, receiving those texts, just, you don't have to say good morning. You don't have to say, how's your day? You don't have to say, what are you doing? Just text me an address and I know what that means. You know what to do with it. I know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So those are another way is you're at work, and this has happened. We just had one of these actually, and they wanted to assume a house. I don't know if you remember that one. So they were at work, and a guy at work, a coworker said, I'm getting ready to list my house. It's not listed yet, but I'm going to list it. And so then they got into a conversation, and they called me and said, I want to assume, his mortgage. And
first
so
of all,
we
what
got
does that
into
mean?
that. What does that mean? Another term that's
a whole nother podcast itself. I'm doing a training on it next week. That's a 2-hour training on just assumptions and what's that mean. But basically, it means interest rates have started to hedge up a little bit. If you look at the historical over the last 30 years, like I have, that average rate over 30 years has been around 6. But we all know the times when they were at, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5. And those loans are out there. And if they were a VA loan or an FHA loan and some USDA loans, those loans can be assumable, which means a borrower can take over that payment. But the new borrower has to qualify in the same manner that the old borrower did. So they have to credit qualify, but they could take over that loan at a much less interest rate, meaning less payment.
Right.
And then for the exchange of that, they just have to pay the buyer his equity in the property.
And so that's
so those are the things we try to put together. And I can help with that, although the loan isn't through me if it's an assumption because you're taking over an existing loan.
That's right.
So I don't per se do those, but I'll definitely help walk somebody through because I completely understand them.
Yeah. When the buyer called me, I said, which you have educated me on assumptions. When we got down to what does it exactly mean? I mean, she's like, I have to come up with what?
Yeah, he had $100,000 equity in the house. So if you want to take over his mortgage, you need to come up with $100,000 to be able to qualify and take over his mortgage. So,
but there are ways to do it.
There are ways to do that. You can, borrow it. There's some home equity lines of credit that you can, get to help you with that. A lot of them require at least 10% down. There's, if you've got a 401k, you could borrow against yourself, so there's ways to do that. So, there's ways to kind of put that together, but you have to deal with somebody who has an understanding on it like you do now. So obviously you and I could sit here and talk about real estate for hours, as we've done many times, right?
Definitely. We can't keep it short, can we?
No,
much to say.
So unfortunately, we're going to have to cut this one a little bit short, but we look forward to part 2.
Part 2. Yes, definitely.
On our next podcast.
On our next podcast. So thanks for joining us on this one, and we'll see you on part 2.
Coffee and Keys is brought to you by Darlene Kemp, VP, Senior Loan Officer, NMLS ID 173897. Atlantic Coast Mortgage, LLC is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 643114. www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. And Crystal Jacques, Realtor for both RE/MAX Allegiance, 4000 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Suite 164, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23452. Office phone 757-490-7300. And RE/MAX Professionals, 20,241 North 67th Avenue, Suite A1 Glendale, Arizona 85308. Office phone 623-362-3000. Each office is independently owned and operated and supports the Fair Housing Act and Equal Opportunity Housing.